And so you can pivot on that from your script and from your CSS. So specifically, I'm going to set up a namespace of SVG here. I happen to have memorized the SVG namespace URL. And there we go, semicolon. Now what I can do is actually use namespace-based selectors to target things. So first I want to set up the case where I'm running in an older browser. So just namespace unaware selector, I'm going to hide my SVG. Great. Now, I'm not really taking advantage of the namespace selector yet, but I want to show you where the progress is at the moment. Flip over. So I've also, unfortunately, hidden it in IE9. And in Firefox, I at least don't see the text I didn't want to see. So let's update it a little bit more. Now I can add a namespace-based selector, where I'm using my SVG prefix that I declared. And I'm going to go ahead, and if the element actually is in the SVG namespace, I'll turn it on. Now I get my content in IE9. And in Firefox, I'm at least not seeing the text. Now, the problem still is I'm getting my fallback content in IE9, so I've got a little bit more work to do. I can take advantage of namespace selectors again and the CSS sibling selector to target my div. And I'll just go ahead and turn it off if my element actually ended up being in the SVG namespace. Great, now my fallback content is gone, and it's still there in Firefox. Now, there's one other little caveat, given what I know about how different browsers handle elements. Older versions of IE don't actually create generic elements. They actually just collapse them when it doesn't know what it is. But there's a well-known workaround for this, specifically if you've ever created the element via script. So I'm going to add a script block. And so now this will cause IE8 and other earlier versions of IE to recognize my SVG element as a generic element. So if I go and refresh my 8 mode page, I get the same experience that I have in Firefox. Oops, I meant to keep that over to the side. And then if I switch over to 9, I'm actually getting the SVG content that I want to display. Now the nice thing about this is, for the most part, I'm not relying too heavily on script, and the detection is pretty compact. It's also taking advantage of the fact that the SVG namespace is actually declared on this element. So it's only going to take effect when a browser supports SVG and HTML. So it's effectively a form of kind of a feature behavior detection hybrid. So really, the major call to action that I want to get across today is, if I haven't made it clear already, avoid using browser detection in your pages, and use feature detection, behavior detection instead wherever you can. Now, I want to reiterate that I've walked through a number of the cross-browser challenges, set up some of the do's, and walked through some of the don'ts. But I want to show you a little bit where you can get a little bit more info. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up jQuery site here. And we'll do api.jQuery. Because this isn't just my idea. This is something that a number of people have been talking about for some time. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll switch over in just a second. Of course, the network connection would be a problem when you're trying to go to a website. Hopefully we're good now. Fantastic. So, like I mentioned earlier, jQuery actually provides you with a number of different pre-baked behavior feature detection scripts. So you can go ahead and just look at jQuery.support and then look for one of these properties to detect a variety of different types of capabilities and features without having to write all the tests yourself. So if you're using jQuery, it's a great thing for you to go ahead and depend on. Also, on their jQuery.browser page, they talk a little bit more about why you shouldn't use it. And if you're really interested in understanding more about how to do feature detection, what the principles are behind it, and other examples that you can use in your own site, they link off to some great references with that type of information and explanation. In fact, one of these even has another set of pre-built tests that you can just go ahead and pull into your own site for use. But my hope here is that I've given you enough info today so that in the case where you don't have something pre-built, you can start thinking about these problems in ways that you can write some of the detection yourself. All right, so at that point, I am open to the floor to questions. If anyone has anything in particular, I can walk through some other specific examples, just anything you might want to know. Surely someone has something. Yes?
So in your example, the document got right, SVG, that was a IE9 minus scenario. And it breaks some rules of sending something out of the page that isn't usable in other browsers or other versions. And also the CSS3 implementation of unused selectors being downloaded. Is there any way to detect what's supported that way? Because you kind of break these rules. So if you send CSS3 selectors down to a browser that doesn't support them, like the specific WebKit or Mozilla, there's no sense in sending them down. Nobody can hear your question.
No.
You go to live?
Oh, yeah.
I can't, yeah.
Sorry about that.
In the earlier presentation about performance and things like that, you don't want to send down selectors to the browser that doesn't support it. And so in feature detection, can you detect which browser supports CSS3 selectors? And also, you don't really want to write a document.write to the SVG for IE9 or above. It's actually an IE9 minus scenario. Is there any way to detect that? Because it's unnecessary code. I know it's a very small example, but in larger sites, it affects latency, right?
Yeah, so let me talk to that kind of in the general principle because feature detection and behavioral detection does have, more so even behavioral detection, you're running a bit more code, and so yeah, you're going to incur a little bit of a performance impact. And it's a trade-off that you have to make when you're debating how to build your site. Like whether the performance optimization is something that is most important to you, or whether you want to make your site a bit more maintainable and adaptable. And a lot of times it depends on your specific scenario. Like if you're updating your site frequently and you're willing to go ahead and tune these things for specific browsers every time a new one is released, that might work for you, and that can work fine. And a number of the top sites do that because they know they have a very active development process. But this is a way that you can make your sites more resilient. And the perf impact of these, in a lot of these cases, is relatively small. Like, it's only if you're really wanting to squeeze every ounce of perf that you can. And from a user perception standpoint, a lot of these aren't going to matter. Any other questions?
Is this example going to be on the web later?
Yeah, I'll actually share out all of these examples. I have a blog post that will follow up on this, and so I'll share them out with that. You can just go ahead and go to the IE blog. If you need the URL, I believe we have it listed here. Yeah, so blogs.msdn.com/IE. And we'll have a post within the next week or so detailing this. Great. Thank you.